Hi everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Tax Tips channel. My name is Cherry Chen, a chartered professional accountant located in Oakville, Ontario, Canada. And I'm on a mission to become the Google Map for hardworking Canadians seeking financial freedom. And today I have, for the first time ever on our channel, I have a family lawyer here. Welcome, Angela Princewill.
Hi, thanks. I'm excited to be here, Sherry. Thanks for having me.
Angela, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm a family law lawyer. I'm very passionate about what I do. I try to turn it down, but I really see myself as a person who steps in to make family lives better. And it almost sounds cliche because everyone's like, well, you're dealing with a lot of people who are going through separation and divorces. And I'm like, yes, I'm doing the heavy lifting. It's easy to be there when everything's going great, but I'm at the tail end. And if there's any way that I can add value and just make things be a little bit easier for this family that is going through the most awful time, it means the world to me to be able to do that. So yeah, so that's I run a firm we're a small firm of about five amazing lawyers. We have a number of support team to help us in serving our clients, and really again we do everything family law related from that lens of how can we make things better for our clients.
Awesome, awesome. So I have many different walks of clients, and a lot of them are real estate investors. So I think it would be great to start off with like someone like let's say they're in their 30s and they have a couple of investment properties, and they now consider getting married. What do they do? Like, should they get a prenup? Because I get the question all the time, like if I get married, what's gonna happen to my assets? And then when I get married, would my spouse get automatically get 50% of my assets? And then if I get divorced, what's gonna happen? Those are the questions.
No, absolutely. And that's a great question because the amount of times that people come to us at the end of the relationship when things are breaking down, it's just absolutely insane. Most people don't expect the consequences of a marriage, really. They don't understand all the obligations that come with it. So the direct answer to your question is 1,000% get a prenup. The proper terminology in Ontario is if you're getting married, it would be a marriage contract. And if you're just moving in together, then it would be called a cohabitation agreement. But you absolutely want one because a lot of people think, well, because we're not married, they're not entitled to get any of that investment property. Or some people even think things like because we're not living, it's not a marital home. And sometimes people go online and they look at laws or maybe they watch movies and things related to the United States. And it's just so heart wrenching for me when they come after the fact. So I love, these prenups, whether it's a marriage contract or a cohabitation agreement, because it allows you to be intentional.
Mm.
You can decide whatever you want from the outset. If you want to give them 50% of all of your real estate earnings and investments and all of that, then you can do that. It doesn't stop you from doing that. But for a lot of people going into that, even the partner is saying, well, you know what, it's your hard work. I don't have a part in that. I don't really think I should, you know, share in that, investment. Then write it down now because what a person is thinking now and how they might feel later when there's resentment and just revenge and things like that playing through is completely different. So be intentional now. And then with a prenup, for example, you can also, even if you say, well, you don't touch any of my investments or whatever, if you feel generous, well, nothing stops you from buying an investment property in the other person's name.
Mm.
So people see this as such of a sort of a zero sum game where you go in and the other party gets absolutely nothing. That's not necessarily the truth of it. That's not how it plays out. What just happens is you get to be intentional and you both go in knowing exactly how things would happen and you can organize your affairs during your marriage in a way that makes sense for you.
No, so I guess the question is, obviously a lot of people get married and there is no prenup because prenup is not something that is an easy conversation to have someone that you are about to get married with. So let's just be realistic. Or sometimes it's just moving in together, a couple moving in together. There's no cohabitation agreement, to be honest. Like, because then two things happen and time flies. The next thing you know is 10 years later, you've been living together for 10 years. So now you're together for so long, or you've been married for so long. So I always get the question like, I bought these assets by myself, and or I started this company myself. I bought these real estate by myself. So for sure, I should be able to get the money from, like, when I sell it. It should be all belong to me when I get a divorce because I bought these all by myself. So can you clarify if I'm right or if that statement is wrong?
Well, I mean,
Without
it
prenup.
is with no prenup. I mean, ideally, we would want to hope that it's all theirs, right? But it's just never really plays out that way. And I know how difficult these conversations around cohabitation agreements are. And or even sometimes, aside from the difficulty of the conversation, people come into relationships having nothing sometimes. And then they
Really?
quickly get to build something. So I understand that. And that's why in Ontario, we don't call it a prenup because you can have it at any point in time. So if you're in a 20-year marriage, now could be the time for you to have that contract. And again, remembering that negotiating it, you can put in terms that are in the other person's favor. So when you do that and it's balanced at that time, then it's easier for the other person to agree. But let's say, you know what, you absolutely don't want to have this conversation and the other person is not going to be cooperative, then what do you do? Well, to me, I think you need to be a little bit more careful. You need to sleep with one eye open pretty much because if you're married in Ontario, what would happen is automatically there's going to be equalization of your properties. It doesn't matter whether they put in any money. And this is one I can say without any disclaimer. It's only subject to, unconscionable circumstances. So there's only limited times where people are married and the courts would not order an equal division. And I use the word unconscionable because it's a very high threshold. That's the word that's in the law. And the courts have interpreted it as meaning something that's shocking to the conscience. Because we're in the family law space all the time, the things that are shocking to our conscience is very little. So, for most people, like, can you believe this and that and that? Yeah, we can. It's just not that shocking. So you would be surprised how little would be shocking to the court's conscience. So you want to be careful when you're doing these things. So if let's say you're not, so I'll just pick a few specific examples. If you have a property and it's a real estate investment and you bought it before the marriage, then maybe start putting together documents. So I had a consultation today with someone, for example, that they got married in 2006. It's not that long ago, but for bank statements, they can't get bank statements and things like that. So if it's a property, for example, maybe it's time to get to your real estate lawyer, for example, and make sure you have all of the closing documentation. You want to have proof of things like, who paid the deposits on the home, just in case that becomes an issue. You want like the check that may put the down payment as an example. And then what would happen for you is you will be able to get the value of the property in that case up until the date of marriage. But you're not protected if that property accrues value from the date of marriage until the date of separation. There's nothing you can do with that. They're just going to have to get it, except we try really, really hard to establish those unconscionable circumstances. It can be done, but it's difficult. For those that aren't getting married, don't think you're off the hook and like that's fantastic. No, I have had to argue cases where people have girlfriends that are meeting with tenants. If you have that girlfriend, that common law partner that going in there when things, it might just be something as simple as, going to drop off, I don't know, a new sink drain or just something because they're they're your partners in life, right? They're helping you. You can't make it there. They're there. They're helping you review rental applications, for example. Well, now you're exposing yourself to something called a trust claim, because that person can say, well, my efforts in some way contributed to them being able to have all of these properties or maintain them, and now they get to walk away with them. So you do have that risk. But again, um, if you don't want to have that conversation, then we're going to maybe minimize, if you're not married, maybe minimize the involvement of your partner in helping you with the property, in running like the property. Yeah.
So, for my sanity's sake, and for me to summarize it, so if you are married, if you're married and you have assets on your own and you're going into about to get married, whether it's real estate or any assets, basically you need like a wedding day valuation, and then
Yes.
make sure that you know that hey, these are all my assets, these are all the value. Any appreciation from then on,
Yes.
it's probably seen by the law that it's contributed by both, and any appreciation would be split 50-50. So then,
Exactly.
okay, unless there is a marriage contract being signed specifying otherwise.
Yes. And now this might be a good time, Sherry, for me to add that this only applies to investment properties, okay?
Okay, okay.
If it is the home you're living in, it doesn't matter if you marry someone and bring them into your mortgage-free home. Under the law, they're entitled to 50% of that property.
So it become a matrimonial home. I know this concept. If
Yeah.
you have a house and it's in your name, you bought it, and then that person move in and you started
Mhm.
living together. It doesn't have
Yeah.
even have to be married, I think.
I'm not, for it to be the matrimonial home, you have to be
Oh,
married.
okay,
Yes.
okay. But what if
Yes.
it is just cohabitating?
Again, that those trust claims. So I have had cases where people have moved into these mortgage-free homes and they are arguing that, well, I was part of the bathroom renovations, for example.
Uh,
I selected. So all for a person to make a trust claim, what they need to show is that they made some contribution to that property in some form. And it doesn't have to be a monetary contribution. So once they can show that they contributed in a way, and now you're walking away with that property and they're getting nothing, you're being unjustly enriched at their expense. And so what they would ask the court to do is to make them whole again. So it may not be an equal 50-50. The courts may say, well, you helped, with the renovations to the home and the property prices increased, even though you didn't necessarily put in any money, but you invested your time and your design skills or whatever else you put in. And so the courts might say, well, that entitles you to 20%, to 25%, depends on the kind of argument that their lawyer makes for them.
okay. That's
Yeah.
a crazy, crazy subject right there. But then for someone who has their like significant other moving into his or her own purchased property, that place automatically become the matrimonial home when they get married. And if that's the case, even if they only get married for a day or 2 days, that matrimonial home would automatically be split 50-50
Exactly.
regardless. If it is a free and clear house, then it is 50-50, free and clear
Yeah.
on both sides. And that does not matter who bought the place, who put down the money, who paid for the mortgage. It's always 50-50.
Yes. So with a short marriage, if it's very short, so if we're saying maybe a year, for example, or even maybe 2 years, depends. That's where the unconscionability aspect might come in. That's where you might go to a court and say this marriage was so short, this person should not be entitled to get half of the home. So then it becomes, there's no strict formula per se, but what is usually done is we would say, okay, it's 60 months, and then we try to, you probably can explain these numbers better than me, Sherry, but we try to make it a percentage of the marriage, the period which you were married. So if you were getting 50% for a 5-year period, then because that's the definition of a short marriage, under 5 years. Now, interestingly, by the time you start to get to 3 years, the courts don't even consider it too short per se. But if it's a year marriage, the courts may find it a little bit shocking that the person would go away with half the funds. And so what would happen in that case is that the courts will say, well, maybe not 50% in that example. So yeah, so that's an option. But I do have a tip that I want to share with people, and it's a bit unconventional, and
We
but
love
it's one way.
unconventional stuff.
It's one way to protect your property. So let's say you're coming into a relationship with a home and this home's paid off, okay? And or you, whatever the case may be, but you don't, and you're married now and you're hearing this and you're freaking out
Yeah.
and you don't want this property to be your matrimonial home. My tip for you is while things are still okay, sell the home.
Oh.
Sell the home, because when you sell the home, you can take those funds. If you purchase another property, you will get a deduction for that home. You would get the deduction for the date of marriage value for that home because it is no longer the matrimonial home as of the date of separation.
Ah, okay, okay, cool. That's a great tip. That's great tip. That's awesome. Now, okay, benching, marching forward from properties and matrimonial home.
Yes.
Now, like I've also heard people saying, "Hey, like I own my business. I built it from the ground up, and it is my business, and it will not work if it is the other person joining." To a
Yeah.
certain extent, to be honest, like for example, in my own accounting business, it's not possible for my husband Erwin to join because it's just not realistic to expect him
It's
to
not
own that
realistic, yes.
small, right?
Mhm.
So those statements are all true. But so like when it like not that I'm planning to get a divorce at all, but like for situation for small business owners, they work so hard, they build it, and now it's divorce time. What's gonna happen?
Yeah, that's a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of people when they find out that it's just your business is just another asset. It's an
Oh,
asset that has a value and that the value of that asset will be divided. So, an example, so in your case, yes, and it's kind of like in my situation as well. I have a law firm. My partner can't possibly be a lawyer. Like it's your, well, they could be, but they're not. They can't do what I do in the
yeah.
firm. Like, but it's an asset that I acquired during the relationship in the eyes of the law without, your husband supporting you, you would not have had the ability to build a thriving business.
Mm,
Whether that's true or not, we do know there's some partners that are really actually more trouble than anything, but we have to say it. There are those situations where there's non-supporting spouses, but the law doesn't look at it that way. From the law's perspective, so long as you're together, you're seen as providing some kind of support. So
mm,
what happens then is the business would have to be valued. We're going to have to get someone to come in and look at your business, and the value would have to be divided. And Sherry, this is why I always say to entrepreneurs, especially for those with partners, you owe it to your partner to get a cohabitation or marriage contract.
mm.
Because this is when if you had a partner, and I'm not sure how your business is structured, but if you have a partner, for example, there are things within your business that you don't necessarily want shared with the public.
Yep.
They're not, if you have a partner that's going through a divorce and it's getting messy, and you have, forensic accountants going through your books and lawyers reviewing your records, that's not what you signed up for. And so
Mm.
that's why I say when you're a business owner, especially if you have a partner, it matters more, not just so much for you, but for the other party. And so, but yes, that business, unfortunately, even if they did absolutely nothing in the business, it's considered an asset to be divided. You don't have to sell it. You don't. I think another thing that worries some people is, well, do they have to come into the business to work with me? Do I have to sell? No, they don't get the business itself. They don't have to come in, but and work in the business. But if the business is worth $5 million by whatever valuation method has been used, then if it's a 50-50 split, you have to find a way to pay them the 2.5 million that they're owed. So yeah.
So that makes sense or not, depending on who you talk to.
I
Um,
like that or not. Honestly, for a lot of
well, it
people,
really
it's a
depends.
not. It doesn't make sense to them.
Yeah, like I mean,
Mhm.
to the spouse who's like trying to contribute it
Mhm.
in a different way, they may think it makes sense, but to the
Yeah.
spouse who has to give away that 50% of the business, probably chances are probably doesn't make sense. Now,
Yes.
then I get the question, and from time to time I get the questions like, "Hey, now I'm getting divorced, or about to get a divorce, like for someone who's about to get a divorce or thinking about potentially separating from the partners, what would you recommend that person to do? Like, what's the steps that you would recommend for someone who's thinking about it and potentially considering it? Now, I'll tell you, me and my other friend, who's also a lawyer, she's a corporate lawyer, and we would talk about like, oh, we'll never get a divorce because it's just way too expensive. It's
Yeah.
cheaper to stay married than
Yes.
getting a
True.
divorce. So tell
That
me
is
all
true.
your wisdoms on this topic. What would you do if you're thinking about that?
Yeah, so I always say the first step, honestly, try to talk to a lawyer. Don't act rashly. You may be able to, strategize and plan. So for some people, it's abrupt. The other person has, called it quits. You have nothing. You are where you are now. What our job is to find exceptions to these rules. So yes, we know it's 50%. Then what do we do? Well, then we try to find different notional, maybe disposition costs that we can pull in and things. So we would try to find strategies to reduce your exposure if you're not, if you're now thrown into it. But if you have a minute to think about it and it's not one of those situations where you have to go away, because for some people it's slow brewing, right? Like it's
Yeah,
years of sort of unhappiness, then maybe you want to be a little bit more intentional. But I also, on the other hand, advocate not waiting too long.
yeah,
Because, for example, if your support obligation in a 5-year marriage and a 15-year marriage, completely different, right? The age, you know, separating from someone in their 30s versus separating from someone in their 60s, again, comes with completely different obligations. So I recognize all of that. But if you have the opportunity to do just a short bit of planning, then we could look into things like what's the timing of this? If there are assets that maybe if there are losses that maybe you can call in to reduce, income at a certain point in time, or if property, how high your property values at this time. There's ways you can arrange your affairs. And I want to be very careful, and I don't, because I'm getting a little bit too specific here, but I would say, as a general rule, talk to a lawyer and let's look at your affairs and see if there's a way we can position you for success. So
mm,
that when you're walking away with the least amount of exposure. I always tell people it's great to be kind. If for most people that are in relationships where they felt that the partner has contributed and has helped them get to where they are, they're usually quite, happy to share whatever they've
mm,
accrued. But sometimes that's not the case, or sometimes everybody, including the other partner that wasn't even in the business, they're quite shocked that they even are entitled to that. Like we get that a lot. They're like, oh my God, I can get half the business. They never knew. So let's just help you, be intentional so that you don't overexpose yourself. And then if you want to be generous, if we've made sure that, okay, we're positioning you for success, then if you want to be generous and give even more than, you're required to, then you do that because that's what you want to do. But we don't want you just making rash decisions and then now you're, out of pocket more than you need to be. So I think talk to a lawyer and so that we can give sort of that very specific advice for specific situations.
yeah. So this is very individual and very classic lawyer and professional advice. To be honest, everyone's situation is different. I had a lawyer friend who was about to get a divorce, and the situation is so different from someone who's just a purely real estate investor who has one investment property, no kids. Like all these scenarios come into play. So it's important to get your professional advice to strategize and then take your next step. I 100% in agreement with that. It's like, oh, how much do you charge for doing a tax return? It's hard to tell you because it's not just like doing the tax return, it's like the entire situation. Now, then my next question is, hey, like there are times that kids are involved. Like it's more often than not. Recently we had I had a conversation with a close friend who has a bunch of clients who are real estate agents, and they said that nowadays it's very common that the tenants are single moms, and so
Mm.
there are kids involved. And now, when in situation where like there is a partner who's making significantly less in terms of dollar figure, um, compared to the breadwinner in the family, they contribute differently. So, what do you need to pay attention to?
Man, that sometimes there's just absolutely nothing you can do. You have to, if there's ways, opportunities to encourage the other person to increase their earnings, that would be a great first step. But if they're not able to,
Mm,
um, I mean, then you want to look at your income closely. Now, the beauty of for business owners is there might be some leeway in how you structure the income that you receive and all of that.
mm,
But what people find shocking is your CRA tax returns and whatever your accountant gives to us doesn't necessarily fly in family court because we can take back expenses and things like that and put it back as income, in your name.
oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so if the incomes we find that are not reasonable, and an easy example would be, a lot of business owners can write off their car expenses as an example. Well,
Yeah,
if they were regular employees, that's not something they can do. So we
yeah.
could claw that back. So where there's kids involved, and incomes are not equal, then there's obviously that support exposure. And it's just having to again look at the numbers to see how can we position this so that the breadwinner's income is as minimal as can be because in a lot of cases you can't make the other person go back to work
Mm,
as much as you want to. Now we can impute some income to them, so it's not, I don't want to give this impression that it's a hopeless situation. So if the person is educated, for example, and maybe stopped working because the children were younger and going to grade school or whatever the case may be. Well, if the children are now in higher grades and can walk home from school or can go to before and after school programs, well, there is a possibility of imputing income to that person because now we're saying, well, you have this education. If you were working as, you know, I don't know, whatever job that might be, you might be making $80,000. So we're going to impute $80,000 because there's no reason why you're not working. So there's strategies like that we would use to reduce, a person's support payable.
I see. So, to summarize what you just said is that if you have a situation, you're in a situation where there is a breadwinner or someone who makes a lot more money, and then the other person does not make as much money but contribute it to the family in a different format. In a situation where there is a divorce involved, there could be alimony and support payment being made, required by law or negotiation between the lawyer to have the alimony being paid from the higher income earner to the lower income spouse. And in situation where there's children involved, it gets even more complicated because then the child care expenses have to be shared, and it would have to be probably contributed more by the breadwinner, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct. Yes, absolutely. So you have to think of that's 100. Everything you said, sure, is 100% accurate. So you look at it from that
Mm,
point, and then you look at the income of the lower person and see how can you increase it so
mm,
that it reduces the amount that you as the breadwinner has to pay. So
mm,
there's two sides to it. There's their income and then there's yours. And I know, so I'm going to add this quickly. A lot of people where there are children involved lately, I see a lot of people saying, well, I want 50-50 so I don't have to pay child support.
Yeah.
And that is not true. In fact, there are times where the 50-50 schedule could work against you, because what the courts, the courts, when children are in shared homes, they want to make sure the children have the same quality of life in both homes. So if your home is the more affluent home, you can believe that you will probably need to pay more to the other party to increase the standard of living in their home so that it's a little bit close to what is in your home. That's another mistake I find people making. They think 50-50 shared parenting means no child support. That is not true. It's not.
Ah, I see what you mean now. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of nuances in this whole like divorce situation. The best advice I can tell people is don't be Angela's client.
Client,
Try not,
right?
try not, or just be Angela's client for the pre-marriage situation, so then you'll never get
Exactly.
into that post divorce situation.
Yes, I that is great advice. Honestly, divorce is it's expensive. You're splitting your wealth, you're splitting incomes, and people worry a lot on how would they get by. But the truth is, you will if it's within your control. Hey, try your best not to get divorced. But sometimes it's not within your control. In which case, talk to a lawyer so that we can try to reduce your exposure. I think that's all we can say.
Well, Angela, thank you so much for your time today. And I think I learned a few things just from having this conversation, so much golden nuggets that I got out of it. And the best thing is that
And
I'm not planning to get a divorce. So
no, don't.
divorce is just expensive. It's better to stay married. If
I
there's,
agree with you.
yes.
I agree, Sherry. I do.
Okay. One last question. How do people get in touch with you if they need some help, whether to draft up the marriage contract or to have a consultation with you?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Sherry. The best way is always all our contact information is online, and it's aprincewill.com. We're on every social media at AP Lawyers. So if you wherever you're at, just check us out at AP Lawyers, and you can send us messages and we'll reach out to you directly.
Amazing, amazing. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. And if you like our video, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. Make sure you share this video with all the friends.